Well, welcome to this edition of Trading Bits and Bytes. I'm Susan Littlefield, doing a little remotely today as I am at the broadcasting from the Nebraska Soybean Association studios here in Lincoln. Darin Fessler is joining us with Lakefront Futures, a variety of things that we're going to look at today, including what's been happening with these weather models. As we talked on Thursday's Fontenelle Final Bell about the weather and these maps that are popping up and the frustrations that are happening really all across the countryside. And China, they are back in the market and really got to watch what's been happening in China when it comes to these big purchases. Is it phase one? Is it something else? We're going to find out all the details as we bring Darin in. And Darin, let's first of all talk about this weather, because obviously everybody's talking about it on social media. Who's getting rain, who's not getting rain, and what the weather maps are showing.
Yeah, it's one of these things where, you see these maps posted on social media and it's like, well, you look out your window and it's like, well, I didn't get any rain. It comes down to somewhat, how are these models, are they viewed by satellite? It's basically how the models are calculating that precip. But I think you got to think it from a larger picture, time frame and a perspective here, because where it's raining and when it's raining is really dictating, I think, what the market and how the market's viewing how good or bad this crop really is. If you are in areas of southwest Nebraska, southern Kansas, Oklahoma Panhandle, you're saying, well, this crop is no way it's going to be anywhere close to trend line yields. When you've been dealing with triple digit heats, no rain, I completely get that, but I think where the market is looking at, okay, is Iowa getting the rains? Is Illinois, Minnesota, in the Eastern Corn Belt? And I think they're looking at these maps. They're talking with producers as well as I am, and they're saying, you know what, where it's getting rain is where it matters the most, and that's not to take anything away from if you're outside of that area, but it's how the market is currently viewing it. And I think if you look forward here, given where the current projected carryouts are on this new crop corn and even the old crop, I think you run into some situations here where this market could get ugly this time of year in the back half of July, and especially in August. Seasonals really start to go against this, at least the corn market.
Do you think there's some nervousness, though, when we look at those weekly drought monitor maps that pop out and people see where it's spread to?
Yes, I think there is definitely concern. A lot of clients in west central Iowa are not feeling the same way as the northern third of Iowa clients I have, and it's probably the same thing can be said for the eastern Iowa. West central Iowa does typically produce quite a bit of corn, and they have been dry. These U.S. drought maps that have come out every Thursday morning has continued to show it's spreading a little bit further east, a little bit north. It is a little bit concerning. But as mentioned with last time we talked, 90% of this crop is going to be pollinated between July 8th and July 20th. We really have not seen the heat in the bulk of the corn growing region to really, I think, hammer this from a pollination standpoint. But I still think it's much more going into the August timeframe. If these rains materialize, then how's that grain feel? And then really, how does the USDA view that into that August WASDE report?
So earlier during the report on Thursday, when you and I were talking, you made a great statement, which was watch what China does, not what China says. And I think there's some real proof in the pudding with that right now.
It really is, and I think that's always been the case somewhat with China. It's they say one thing, but then it seems like they always do the other. And so what we've seen recently is they're coming in, buying the largest purchase ever on corn, and just that recent sale was nearly 70 million bushels. They step in again this week and bought quite a few beans. These are all really encouraging things. Now, granted, we've talked a lot here. I've always been on the camp, as of this year anyway, that the bean story is much more friendly than the corn story. And I think that's where corn may find a little bit of support. If we run into some weather issues on this bean crop in August, and if China continues to step up on these bean purchases, that may add some additional support for this corn market. So I think that's something the producers should at least feel a little bit good about, especially China stepping and buying these beans.
All right, lots of good things to think about. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
You bet. Thanks, Susan.
Darin Fessler has been joining us at this week's edition of Trading Bits and Bytes. Just a reminder, commodity futures and options do involve substantial risk of loss and are not suitable for all investors. Thanks for joining us on this week's Trading Bits and Bytes. I'm Susan Littlefield.